Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first of two-part webinar series on cybersecurity. My name is Lee Kefford and I am the founder and managing director of National PC. On today's webinar, it is titled Stay Afloat, Navigating Phishing and Data Security Threats Without Being a Sitting Duck. In today's session, we'll give you a snapshot of the current security landscape in Australia, expertly detailed by our guest speaker, Ray Barber from Kaseya, a Q&A session, followed by a special offer exclusively for our attendees today. We're thrilled to have you with us for part one, and we're looking forward to delving deeper in our follow-up webinar. But for now, let's get started and I'll hand it over to Ray.
I don't know if you can see my screen okay there, Lee.
Yes.
Right. Well, hello, everybody. Great to have you here today to learn about what is the #1 cybersecurity threat that's affecting businesses today. As Lee mentioned, my name is Ray Barber. I'm Director of Customer Success Engineering for APAC in Kaseya. And here today with National PC to talk about the cybercrime landscape and more specifically phishing. So cybercrime in general is a huge topic. So it's important to understand this isn't just about stopping criminals. I don't know if you ever saw this news, but it was out there late last year. The Australian government actually changed the landscape pretty much by talking about the fines that are involved if there's a serious or repeated privacy breach. And that law changed to be a fine of $50 million or 30% of your annual adjusted turnover, whichever is more. So that's right. In Australia, the minimum fine is now $50 million for a serious data breach. So, you know, for their part in it, the government is taking this really seriously. They want to see that businesses are doing the right things to protect people's data and not end up with it out in the dark web for sale. So here's some other facts, just to give you some more background on the market, and we'll get into some examples in it specifically, but these are around the topic of phishing. And phishing as a service, so this concept of somebody can actually go online and buy a kit or ask somebody else to do some of the work on their behalf, means that it's really quick and easy for a cyber criminal to do a phishing attack. And they don't actually need to know how to code in order to undertake phishing attacks. So I'll show you shortly in a minute how we do that. So once it was only the larger, more sophisticated hacking groups that were kind of delivering this sort of attack. So now this capability has come way down market, and smaller players, and they can now target SMBs, and they know that small businesses may not have the same level of protections in place, so they see it as potentially soft targets. So they're going to give it a go. So when we're talking about phishing, you may have heard various sort of terms floating around, but what does it all actually mean? So most cyber attacks of any kind, whatever bucket you want to put them into, actually start with phishing. It's by far the most prevalent kind of cybercrime. And it could be something pretty broad initially. They're just trying to get one person to click on the wrong thing or give up a piece of information they shouldn't have given up, so that a more targeted attack can then follow. Okay, so it's not necessarily the beginning and the end of the whole process from a cyber criminal's perspective. It may just be the start that they're using to get their foot in the door. So generally, phishing is the practice of using email to target people to give up information. But there's also things like smishing and vishing, so using text-based attacks or even video-based attacks. There's actually quite a few different forms of it. But it's most common by far is email. Spear phishing is a subset of phishing attacks where the individual being attacked is uniquely positioned to fulfill the attacker's end design, right? So they're going a little bit more narrow with their targeting. And whaling, that's generally defined as a subset of spear phishing where the attacker will target a specific senior employee. So that sometimes covers, and you might see it in the news, like celebrities, public figures, other high-level individuals to obtain access to information or funds. So let's take a bit of a look of what does this actually look like? When we're talking about phishing, we're talking about emails. You've all seen sort of very bad examples, but what does a good example look like, and how are people getting caught by this kind of thing? So please note this example has been adjusted slightly from reality, because I don't want to be putting stuff out on the web that actually shows how this stuff is done. This is just going to give you a bit of an idea, okay? But the initial email that you might get through can look so real and so convincing, it is actually difficult even for a security professional such as myself to tell the difference between a genuine email and one that's been created for this kind of attack. So you have to be pretty smart to be able to notice the difference. And of course, one of the things is there'll be a link to click. So there'll be something for you to click through to, which is the first sign that something is suspicious, because most companies now avoid sending you things to click. They know that that's how people get targeted. But if you did click this, you'd actually get presented with a extremely convincing Microsoft login page. One that is so difficult to tell that once again, even a professional may be fooled. And this will work and act like a real Microsoft login. So you'll actually go through a login process, much the same as you would with a normal login page from Microsoft. But at the same time as that's going on, you're falling prey to a phishing attack. So they're capturing your credentials. They may even be capturing the MFA or the 2FA that you put in at the time of that login as well. And they're passing that straight through. And in really clever attacks like this, they will actually use that to log you in and drop you onto a Microsoft page so you feel like you've been successful. It doesn't seem like there's anything suspicious going on, and it gives you a false sense of security. But in the meantime, the hacker has now got access into your email account. And so can you spot the issue here on this login page? What's wrong with it? What would be the giveaway clue here so that you know that it's not genuine? See anything? Maybe not. So right up the top there, what I've done is swapped out an N for an M. So this is just an example, but what hackers will often do is, they've got to actually have an address where they've hosted a page to carry out this kind of attack, and it has to be registered on a domain name to work. And so the URLs often won't be exactly the same as what you would expect from a real page. There is ways and means for them around that also. So actually spotting it sometimes can be really hard, because even the URL may be genuine, and they're actually redirecting browser traffic to somewhere else. But often, once the attacker has compromised your business email account, they'll use the emails contained in it and other publicly available information to plan the next attack. So they're now going and researching. Oh, well, I see. This is the other companies that these people do business with. This is the kind of conversations they're having. Here's who's talking about the money, and they're looking for the next line of attack. In this case, they've decided this is going to be the perpetrator. So they've sent through an email, and it may be a very legitimate looking email that comes through from an actual real person. So they may already have this person's account compromised from a real supplier, an actual customer example, because they're reading the emails, they know who the customer is, they know what kind of information would normally be sent. and they can send it at just the right time and with just the right information. In this case, asking for payment to be resent. And there's always that issue in here, that sense of urgency and asking for an action. But yeah, they've said, oh, there's a good legitimate reason that I'm asking you for this. Payment failed, and this is probably why. So do you mind going and taking a look back at the invoice and making sure that you got the account number right? So the invoice is from a vendor they know, from somebody looks like someone who they've already trust, and the article looks completely genuine to them. And if Janice calls the very legitimate looking number on the invoice, I've used an American example to protect the innocent, but imagine it's an Australian phone number. And she gets someone very nice on the end of the line at Walker Homes answering with the correct name, and who, of course, confirms the account number and payment. So it's actually not that hard for these people who buy these kits to also get someone to answer a phone call from the phone number. And they can actually use something called deepfake to also cover up their own voice and sound like somebody else, including accent, whether it's a male or female voice. So there's plenty of ways for them to involve themselves in this to keep up the ruse. So, the point of that example is really just to focus your mind. You don't know who's going to be targeted in your organization. Certainly not for an initial phish to capture information or just compromise an email account. So you need to be confident that all of your people not only know how to spot trouble, but know the right actions to take. Now, just to give you some idea of the sort of stats on the state of that market, they're pretty grim wherever you look. So as a security professional, it's my job to understand the reality, right, for our customers. So, National PC is a customer of ours, and for their customers, like yourselves. We want to understand what's really actually happening out there in the real world. What are the real threats? What's going down? And that makes sure we can correctly balance the risks and make the right kind of suggestions to people in order to protect themselves, and make sure we're building the right things in terms of product capabilities and services to help out. So the whole point here is, what should you be doing about it, right? So here's the first thing you can do, is use better filtering on email. So even though there's quite good capabilities included today inside of Microsoft products, if you're on the right licensing level, and they're doing a lot of work to help protect customers, they don't capture everything. There's new kinds of filtering made available now, and the latest technology is using AI. And the AI specifically is understanding, who do you normally get emails from, who do you normally respond to, and learning what normal looks like for you. So this is something that's much more targeted and specific to your organization. And then it can provide banners which actually make it really obvious, this is an email that doesn't look right. There's something suspicious about this, or this person wouldn't normally contact you about this particular subject, right? So using much cleverer things to be able to look for and establish when patterns aren't how they would normally be, and therefore give you better warning signs. And this just acts as like a first line of defense, clearing more things out of the way, giving more opportunity for your people to spot that something might be wrong, to lower the chances of compromising emails from being clicked on by staff in the first place to start one of those phishing-based attacks, right? But above all else, really, you have to help educate your people with specific, targeted, and regular ongoing training. Yeah, so everybody knows, you can watch a couple of videos or do a questionnaire or these kinds of things, and you might spend an hour on it, say, up front, like invest quite a bit of time, but it's forgotten. By the following week, they may remember some of it. So this is why it's really important to drip feed like just a really small amount of information constantly and ongoing. to make sure there's good education happening all of the time. So, while the filtering is important and can lower that sort of noise floor to hopefully make it easier for your people to spot threats, when it comes down to it, they're the ones that are going to have to make a call at some point. And every successful attack on SMBs worldwide, there is a victim. There's some staff member that's the one that actually did something that led to fraud or compromise and cost the business money. And what you want to do is to help stop your people being a victim, because it's having talked to people who have been in that exact position, it's not nice. And we want to do everything we can to possibly avoid it. And the biggest thing usually is getting good information and understanding about how they can avoid those threats. And our stats in the real world of business using this approach have shown that it drops the chances of compromise significantly. It's never going to get to zero, unfortunately, but that's what insurance is for, right? So if you've done all the right things and you've sufficiently lowered your risk, and so therefore you're not now at the behest of like the big government fines that may be put into place if you haven't done the things you should be doing to protect your business, then that insurance overall is going to get cheaper for you. The chances of making a successful claim are much more likely, much higher. And as well as any knock-on consequences being lowered as well. So, doing everything you can to prepare your people, that's not just good business sense. It's actually shown that it impacts the overall business value. And it's good for your people and for your business monetarily. But it's also just the right thing to do, right? It has a proven solid ROI for small businesses. And we've seen that time and time again. And fortunately, security awareness training provides more than just bang for your buck. It could even promote business growth. And we've seen that out in the real world as well. So these are the kinds of things you want to consider as an important part of the overall approach to how do you mitigate these kinds of risks. So, to be honest, actually, I don't know why the stat says only 59%. I know there's some very smart people in our marketing people that do all the research and come up with the stats and put these out in front of you. But I'm struggling to think of who the 41% are that aren't going to benefit. I always question that. And I guess if you don't have a computer, not going to make any difference. There's some people who work in businesses today who don't really access the technology, or their access is limited to the technology, so they can't do much once they're on there, so there's no risk. But that's getting increasingly rare in today's businesses. Many staff have a level of access to data and to the kinds of data that can create significant risk. So that means you have to be ready to help them. And that's why we partner up with companies such as National PC, where we can bring enterprise level security offerings and capabilities down through a provider like National PC down to our small businesses in Australia, making that high-end capability feasible, a feasible reality for small businesses here in Australia. So we covered quite a lot of information there. There's a lot to the topic. So any thoughts from you, Lee, or any other questions flying around out there today?
No, that was great. We haven't received any questions through Teams yet. We'll just give it a few moments. Yeah, sure. And if any attendee would like to ask a question, just pop it into the chat.
Excellent. Well, and having done lots of webinars and discussions on these topics around security and phishing, I know some of the common things that people ask about. What sort of once they've been looking at these kind of topics, right? Because they're hearing about it all the time. These kinds of attacks. They're seeing these sorts of things going on, and they want to know what things like what is the reality that they're the ones that are going to actually be targeted or picked, those kind of thing. And to some extent, that is completely random. So the phishing that goes on, finding people and targeting them, is a bit like marketing, right? They're just casting the net wide initially out to as many as possible, and they build out big databases and lists of who's a good likely target. And the better the data they have about who to target and who might be a good target, they turn around and sell that for a higher price. So you don't want to end up on one of those lists. You don't want to look like a good target. And hygiene around emails, who can accessing them in a secure way, etc. Who you send emails to, all of that stuff all counts towards the sort of score that hackers might give as to whether or not you're a good target for this kind of attack. And if your people are educated and don't fall prey to even replying to things in the first place, it's giving less chance that your email, an email address from one of your employees even shows up on one of these lists in the first place. So that's a common question of who is targeted and how likely it might be targeted on this kind of attack.
We do have one question. As a small business owner with limited resources, I can't necessarily invest in top tier security tools. What are the most cost-effective yet essential cybersecurity measures we can take to protect my business from phishing and data breaches?
Well, phishing and data breaches. Data breaches in general, there's all kinds of things. I'd say use a standards-based approach, like something like Essential 8, to measure the effectiveness of your overall approach. But for phishing specifically, that's the whole point of this webinar, really, is introducing those tools like the smart AI filtering and using things like security awareness training. And I know National PC has those capabilities, and that's what I always talk to the SMB market about, is the whole point of having IT service providers like National PC in the mix here is exactly that, bringing enterprise class solutions and packaging them up in a way to make them cost effective for our small business. Small businesses out there in Australasia, as you can tell, I don't have an Aussie accent, so I'll say Australasia.
Yeah. Excellent. I don't believe we've received any other questions. So I think we'll move on to the next slide.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. That was great.
No problem.
Okay. Okay. So we are offering an exclusive offer for our attendees today. We are offering free IT cyber security and risk assessment. So part of this offer is we'll discover and bolster the strengths and vulnerabilities of your IT framework. We'll pinpoint vulnerabilities within your IT network and receive tailored recommendations specific to your business needs. Now, to claim this offer, just simply go to nationalpc.com.au/offer to claim your free assessment. You will also be receiving a copy of all the attendees today, a copy of the recording with that link as well. But if we don't have any other questions, I think that's a wrap.
Awesome, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all the attendees.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.